Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fire Engineering Talk Radio in another installment of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. This podcast is dedicated to our great volunteer fire service and getting firefighters to embrace the message that developing and maintaining and portraying a professional image is the duty and responsibility of all firefighters, paid or volunteer. Tom Merrill here, glad to have you listening in. It's Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. Have another great show lined up for you tonight. And again, it focuses on very pertinent topics within our volunteer fire service. But just a couple housekeeping items to go through first. And as you probably know by now, FDIC has been moved yet again, a little bit earlier than it was originally rescheduled for, and now it's going to be held the week of August 2nd. It'll be August 2nd to the 7th in Indianapolis, and took a little bit of finagling with my work schedule, but I think I'm going to be there. I'm committed to being there, and I'm planning on presenting my 4-hour professional volunteer fire department class again, and I always have a great group of firefighters on hand, so hopefully you can be there as well, and I'd love to connect with you and talk about things we can do both personally and organizationally within our departments to uphold and portray that professional image that we know is so important. So, FDIC, August 2nd to the 7th in Indianapolis. And if you need more information, head on over to FDIC.com for information that you will need to get you all set up there. And matter of fact, I didn't even think about mentioning this till it just hit me. I got an article coming up in July's edition of Fire Engineering Magazine, The Professional Volunteer, and earning that title. A little segue into my presentation and talking about some of the things that go into making a firefighter a little bit more professional, and talking about how it really doesn't matter if you're paid or volunteer. And, some dispute that, and I get it. Hey, I'm open to debate, and I totally understand that there's definitions out there that do say professional means you're getting paid. But what I wrote about in my article is let's worry about what's under our own personal control. So, okay, there are some definitions of professional that define paycheck as meaning professional. But there's also a lot of other definitions that go into the term as well, showing a high level of skill, treating people right, being trained and competent in your craft. So let's worry about the things that are under our own personal control and strive to embrace those things that make us professional. So that's the gist of my article. That's going to be in the July edition of Fire Engineering, and just a month or so before the big conference opens up. So looking forward to getting back, though, for FDIC. And as you know, things I think are slowly opening up, and I'm very excited to get back on the road and start doing presentations again. Matter of fact, a couple of weeks I'm going to be heading down to New York State Thruway, going to meet up with some great brothers and sisters at the Victor Fire Department and discuss what it means to be professional. Looking forward to that, doing it on their training night in a couple of weeks. And, you always hear me talking about the great things the National Volunteer Fire Council does for the volunteer fire service. And I'd like to invite you to participate in their virtual training summit, which is going to be on Friday, May 21st, beginning at noon. I think it runs to about 6 o'clock or so Eastern time zone. And the training summit, again, it's the second year in a row that they've had to do it virtually. I participated in it last year, and I will be again this year. Great venue, even online. There's so much to learn. They got some great presenters. They're going to be talking about firefighter cancer. They're going to be talking about roadway safety incidents. They're going to be talking about officer development. They're going to be talking about media and dealing with the media, and just so many great sessions that basically from noon till 6 p.m. Head on over to nvfc.org. You'll see a link for the training summit. It would be well worth your time to register and participate in that great training summit. I'm going to be doing my just a quick 1-hour presentation, officer development and leadership success in our volunteer fire service. I think I start around 3:45, and hey, I'd love for you to join us. But again, I'd encourage you to check out all the great programs that are going on that day. And I'd also encourage you to become a member of the National Volunteer Fire Council. It's so inexpensive. I think it's like $18 to join, and you have access to so much stuff. And again, you'll see it on their website, nvfc.org. They've got so much material to help us out, from training information, recruitment information, articles to help you manage your fund drive better, just so many great resources for an inexpensive $18 a year. So check it on out, nvfc.org, and check out their training summit on Friday, May 21st. And I thought you might want to know that, again, MSA and DuPont are doing another gear giveaway. And the application period ends June 1st, so you got some time. They've done this the last few years, but it's MSA and DuPont. It's their gear giveaway, and they're going to donate 52 sets of turnout gear and 52 helmets to 13 all-volunteer or mostly volunteer departments in the U.S. and Canada. And again, there's information that you can find on nfvc.org that'll take you to more to the site where you can get more information on it. The deadline again is June 1st, and you have to be over 50% volunteer. You got to serve a population of 25,000 or less, and you got to be in the U.S. or Canada. But if you meet that criteria, check it out. Hey, everyone can use some new turnout gear, right? 52 sets of turnout gear and 52 helmets going out to 13 all volunteer or mostly volunteer departments. And just a great program. They've been doing it the last several years now. And, one other thing I just wanted to share with you, we're all tired of COVID. It's exhausted us. It's changed how we do things. It's prevented us from doing a lot of things that we'd like to do, especially on the volunteer side of things with a lot of our activities and, even just hanging out at the firehouse, right? And we'd like to think we're rounding the corner. It's coming to a close. We're getting vaccinated. Things are opening up, and they are, and we should be glad for that. But we can't lose sight of the fact that we've still lost a lot of brothers and sisters to this terrible disease, this terrible COVID epidemic. And yesterday, I don't know if you saw it, but on Billy Goldfeder's site, the Close Calls, Firefighter Close Calls, they broke down the statistics over the past year regarding COVID and how it's affected us in the fire community and EMS community. And, I was shocked when I was reading this last night. I sat down late last night after doing a few things and popped open a Bud Light, was catching up on emails and everything. And holy cow, here's, the Firefighter Close Calls pointing out that, COVID-19, we lost 123 fire personnel and 56 EMS personnel to COVID-19. My state, New York, led in the deaths, 13.8% of the deaths for New York residents, and Pennsylvania was right behind at 9.8%, and Texas and New Jersey right there. Then also New York again led the highest percentage of states for COVID-related deaths for EMS personnel. So pretty sobering information. And the average age of the firefighter who died due to COVID was about 56. The average age of the EMS personnel who died due to COVID was 56. So I don't know. I just found it very sobering that as much as I want to think we're getting past it, we still lost a lot of brothers and sisters to it, and it still affected us in so many ways, and probably will for a while. So we just need to remember that we're not out of the woods yet. We lost some brothers and sisters, and we need to hold them in our hearts and remember them, because it's been a rough year. Really has been a rough year, and it ain't over yet. But better days are coming. I'm very optimistic on that. Anyway, joining me tonight is someone I consider an absolutely true brother. Not only a true brother, I consider him a good friend, a cigar-smoking buddy, a fire chief who is extremely passionate and driven and focused on one thing. The thing we talk about every single month on this show, the thing that I know most of you listeners share too, right? That's delivering professional service with our professional volunteer firefighters. He definitely embraces and supports our message here on the show. And he has walked the walk as a paid and volunteer firefighter, and I'm so glad he can be with us here tonight. And I am talking about Chief Brandon Fletcher, who is a 20-year student of our great fire service. He's a second-generation firefighter. Again, he has a background as a volunteer and a career in the rural, suburban, and airport industrial settings. He's a designated chief fire officer. He holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Tennessee in Martin, as well as tons of firefighting-related certifications. And he is currently the fire chief for the Gilt Edge Volunteer Fire Department, which is located in the great state of Tennessee, I believe in the western portion of Tennessee near Memphis. So I would like to welcome him to the show. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey, thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. It's good to be here, and thank you for having me.
Oh, so glad to have you. And thanks for catching my typo tonight as well, for those that maybe didn't see it. You know, I make these advertisements for the show just like any time I post on my professional volunteer Facebook page or any of my personal page. I swear I check things over 5, 6, 7 times. Boy, did I blow that one. I totally blew the link for the show, but Chief Fletcher, you had my back. You saved me there. I was working in the yard and didn't see your text to me for an hour or so, but I ran in and fixed it as quick as I could, so thanks very much.
Not a problem, Tom, not a problem.
You know, Chief, you're a humble guy. One thing you didn't put in the bio that you have is, and I'm not going to let it escape, you're a veteran, right? I think you're a proud Army veteran, and
yes, sir.
I want to thank you for your service.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we're proud of you. So many people speak about the great things that you're doing and you've done, you know, not just in the fire service, but as a U.S. Army veteran. So thank you very, very much for your service. You know, you're actually one of the first chiefs that I got to know as I started out on my professional volunteer fire department lecture tour. You know, I was out traveling around, not really knowing many people, and you were one of the first ones that came up and introduced yourself to me and told me you were following my page, and you know, that started off our great friendship. You know, we've shared many a conversation and realized we share the same beliefs and thought processes and ideas when it comes to our beloved volunteer fire service, and you know, the importance of being well trained and competent and compassionate and leading with integrity and treating people right. And so, you know, it's great to actually have you on the show now so we can talk some more about it. But yeah, you were one of the first ones that reached out to me that I got to know. So thank you for that.
Well, no, not a problem. I appreciate it. I remember scrolling through the Blog Talk Radio, I guess, menu one night and just seeing the different podcasts, and I saw the professional volunteer fire department, and I'm like, what's this about? So anyway, I started listening in, and who's this Tom Merrill guy? So I started searching and pulling up articles and reading and everything, and I'm like, I got to find this guy because him and I need to sit down and talk because we're on the same page. So I was glad to find you. I think it was at FDIC and finally get to sit through your class, and loved it, by the way, and have recommended it to numerous people. I think a couple of my guys got to sit through it as well at one of the Les Lukert conferences out in Nebraska. So you got a good thing going, and I think it's helping a lot of departments.
I appreciate that. I really do. And so so I like to talk to a lot of chiefs about the premises, the professionalism, and get their take on it. So as I told the listeners, it is something that you fully embrace, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Being a volunteer is not an excuse for mediocrity. And, as I like to talk about, I can't stand mediocrity. And, I talk about in my presentation that I do that, Coach Nick Saban. Now, I'll preface this: I'm not an Alabama fan. I'm a Tennessee fan through and through.
I was going to say, man, you're a Tennessee guy.
I can respect what Coach Saban has put together there in Alabama, and what he says regarding high achievers don't like mediocre people, and mediocre people don't like high achievers could not be more true. And so. What gets me fired up, what gets me really, really going is, not so much when the public or outsiders maybe look down at volunteers or make assumptions that, we're not as well trained or not able to perform as well as our career brothers and sisters. But when volunteers themselves look at them, look at their department, look at themselves as somehow, not being up to standard because they're not career firefighters. They're just a volunteer. I can't stand that phrase. It gets me fired up. So, with that, obviously, it's not just, saying it. You got to walk the walk, as you said. if you want to be considered professional, you need to be professionally trained. You need to be professionally credentialed. You need to perform, with a sense of purpose. You've got to back up everything. It's not just, oh, hey, we do the same job, the fire doesn't care. No, you have to make preparations. You have to train. Okay, you have to lead people if you're a chief or an officer. And so you and I, we're on the same page. I think we say a lot of the same things. We just say it a little differently. But we're definitely speaking the same page.
Yeah, well, I can tell you our blood boils together. Our blood pressure does spike equally when people say, well, we're just volunteers, or I'm just a volunteer. And they usually always emphasize just, too, like they should be, they shouldn't be proud to be a volunteer. Well, I'm just a volunteer. No. Say it with pride. Yes, you are a volunteer, but be damn proud of it and strive to be a professional volunteer. Absolutely, my friend. So before we move on into some of the things we're going to talk about tonight, let's give the listeners a little bit of your background. I know you're a second-generation firefighter, I believe, so tell us a little bit about your fire service journey and even your little military experience there. We'd love to hear about that.
Okay, well, they kind of all blend together off and on. So I joined at 18, but, of course, I've been around the fire department for, I guess since I was 4 years old. My department in Gilt Edge was founded in 1986. Not only second-generation firefighter, second-generation chief. So, Dad was a chief, so I grew up, going
right
to calls.
There at Gilt Edge? Was he the chief of Gilt Edge?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, that's fantastic. I didn't know that.
So I grew up going to calls, going to station, hanging around, being raised around other firefighters and everything. So, I mean, it was, kind of in the cards of how that would turn out. So I joined at 18, and like a lot of young volunteers, I was just excited to be there, happy to be there, and being a part of the team and getting to run calls and fight fires and everything that comes with that. Joined the military a little bit after that, probably about 6 months. Joined the Tennessee Army National Guard. It seemed like a good way to pay for college, and I knew that I wanted to do some kind of military service, and it would still allow me to kind of be around, close to home and everything. And gosh, we could spend an hour talking about all of that. So let me, I guess I'll
was
fast
that pre
forward.
9/11 or post 9/11 when you joined?
So I joined pre 9/11. So I joined in January of 2001. And
wow.
So interesting story on that is I shipped to basic training in August of 2001. So I was in basic training when 9/11 occurred. So for me, 9/11 is a little strange. I still see footage and video from 9/11 that's still new to me that I didn't see because we were so isolated, in basic training. I can tell you the day, as far as what we were doing, we were just starting basic rifle marksmanship. We were in the classroom out in the range area where they had the tables that had all the parts of the M16 kind of outlined. So you took your rifle apart and you laid the different pieces along the silhouette of that piece. And of course, it identified it, told you what it was. And so we were learning to take our rifles apart, put them back together. And the company commander came in, which was strange. I mean, we would see the company commander periodically, but for the company commander to just kind of come into the middle of the class when the drill sergeants were teaching was a little strange. And he pulled the drill sergeant off to the side. They had some kind of whispered conversation, and we went back to work and everything. And then this happened again and again. And then on the third time, they called for everybody to come outside and told us to leave our weapons, which, we just started, that was a no-no, something we didn't do. We thought it was a trick. And so, I mean, it actually took the drill sergeants kind of breaking out of character for a minute to tell us, no, leave your weapons where they are, everybody outside. And so anyway, we went outside, and company commander briefed us on what had, and, at that point, the two aircraft had struck the towers as well as the Pentagon. We didn't know about the aircraft that was down in Pennsylvania yet. But so, they started getting people together, that were from the areas and everything so they could get a list and check on families and what have you. And again, you hear all the stories in basic training, mind games and stuff that they play. And so we weren't really even 100% yet still that we were being told the truth. And so anyway, as the day went on, we went back to training, and we ended up getting phone calls home that night, which again was an unusual thing then. I think it's very common now. And then they brought us in the battalion classroom, and they showed us the news from the day. And at that point, after calling home and seeing the news footage, it's like, okay, this is real. And, the company commander, he told us, I just still remember his words. He said, "There's going to be a war fought over what happened here today."
Wow.
And he could not have been more true. And so that changed basic training, for sure. That there was, not that the drill sergeants or anybody wasn't doing their job beforehand. They absolutely were, but we just went from, or they just went from, hey, we're training, soldiers for a peacetime army, to we're training soldiers that are probably going to go to war now. And so training ramped up exponentially. And that's my 9/11 story. Was out on the rifle range, and we didn't believe it was true until probably about 1700 after we'd had chow, and they showed us the news and let us call home. So.
And you're going from a peacetime military to a wartime military, not what you signed up envisioning, for sure. I imagine it had to feel like, I know it's like being a firefighter. You want to work and fire because that's what you train for. So it's not like you weren't prepared to go, but still had to be like a punch to the gut when it's like, holy cow, it's real now.
Yeah, it changed your perspective. I don't know. I'm weird, because the 4 deployments that I ended up doing, 3 of them I volunteered for. So, I was kind of that odd duck that it's like, hey, we need somebody, and I'd raise my hand and say, all right, let's go. And so for me, it was kind of like, well, okay, maybe this is going to be a little more than 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, but I'm good with that. And so anyway, we went on through basic training, went on through AIT. I was a medic, so went down to Fort Sam Houston there in San Antonio, and went through all that. Came back home. Went off, started college and everything. Was still going back home, periodically on the weekends, and would volunteer. And then I was able to get on as a reserve there in Martin, Tennessee, while I was in college. So I would come in, and I guess it was probably a good thing. Probably kept me out of a lot of trouble because instead of Friday nights, Saturday nights hitting the bars and the college town scene, I would rather go ride a shift at the fire station and make calls.
So they have part-time spots for you?
It was a reserve program then. If you met the criteria, I think it was like a $50 a month stipend or something like that they paid. But it was more of a volunteer program than a part-time program.
Gotcha.
But I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Had a real good time participating in that program. And then, so 2002 rolled around, and it's probably another good thing. Everything has a plan. My GPA pretty well, wasn't really indicating that I needed to stay in college anyway, but they hadn't thrown me out yet. And, so right around the invasion of Iraq, everything started kicking off. They started calling up guard units and everything. Mine got called up. And to long story short, they ended up going stateside. But because I'd already dropped college, instead of going back in, I was like, I want to find a unit that's going to Iraq. So I did, and I joined up with them. And so that was my first deployment. We did 13 months, boots on the ground in Kuwait and Iraq during the invasion, and for 13 months after that. So came back, went back to school for a little while, still did the firefighter thing. Bounced around, tried law enforcement. That was a bad idea even back then. Let's see.
I didn't know that. You tried the cop thing, huh?
Yeah. Gave it a shot. And then did a second deployment back to Iraq and Kuwait again. Doing the convoy security and the medic stuff through 07, 08. Came back from that, still wasn't quite ready to grow up and deal with the real world, so turned right around, went to Afghanistan because I hadn't checked that place out yet, and I heard it was awesome. And so I went over there, spent a year in Afghanistan, came back from Afghanistan, and was like, okay, probably can't keep doing this forever. Probably need to grow up. And so post 9/11 GI Bill had come about, and so I went to college, and everything was paid for, taken care of. Got all that knocked out. Then made my way back home, still kind of picking up there with the volunteer fire department, and started working my way up through the ranks there from firefighter to lieutenant, training officer, deputy chief, eventually chief. We made a big push probably around 2014 to get away from just doing the state minimum training, which in Tennessee for an interior firefighter, the state minimum is a 64-hour classroom course and then a live burn. It ends up totaling up around about 80 hours, depending on how they do it. And that'd been the minimum standard. That's what I did. That was what I started with back in 2000 in 2001 is when I did my fire training. So we decided, and this was kind of cool, and this kind of segues into a little bit of my leadership portion that I talk about in my presentations is, the best change is usually driven from the bottom up and not mandated from the top down. And so we had some young folks join the department, three or four folks right there about the same time. They went through their fire training, the basic 64, and they went to the live burn. And at the live burn at the State Fire Academy, the instructors really, really, really encouraged them to get their firefighter 1 and 2 and progress through, with the certification process. And so they came back, and about this time I had just become the training officer. And so they came back from that burn, and they're just like, hey, LT, we want to do this. And, of course, I didn't have any idea how to make it happen, but I said, all right, then we're all going to do it together, and let me go find out how we do it. And so we put a plan together. We got it all worked out. And so that kind of started the transformation of our department with the training side of things. It was around about that same time we started going to conferences. We found out about Metro Atlanta Fire Conference. We found out about Blog Talk Radio with fire engineering, and started listening in and just learning tons and tons. And we got to figure out how to get the FDIC. And Les Lukert Conference came about, and so I mean, it was one thing after another, and so we started going. We had this group, this core group that we would just pile into my red truck, and we'd drive to Atlanta, or we'd drive to Nebraska, or wherever, and we would start learning different ways to do things, and then bringing it back.
You mean
to
you got out of your own bubble? You actually got out of your
crazy.
own bubble? Oh my God, that's like
can you believe that?
That's like blasphemy to a lot of people.
Oh, and I didn't know how much it was at that time. I have since learned, but yes, we got out of our own bubble and started learning how other departments did things, and and started looking for other training opportunities. We started sending folks down to Pensacola and the classes that Kurt Isaacson does down there. Firehouse Expo came to Nashville for a few years, so that's just a little ways up the road. We kept going to FDIC, kept going back to Les Lukert, Metro Atlanta a couple of times, and so we just kept that going, and we kept bringing things back, and basically just kind of updating and reshaping and remolding the fire department. And then, of course, as we continued to do that, then that became part of our culture. And then as newer people came on board,
that's all they knew, right?
No. Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, it was great. So, I mean, that's just that's in a nutshell, the military service. They did snag me one time. The one time I didn't volunteer, they got me in 11-12. When I came back from Afghanistan, I wanted to go back to my old unit that was just up the road where I started, and they're like, yeah, that we got a spot open. I was a staff sergeant at the time, and so yeah, we got a staff sergeant spot open there, and you'll love it. That that unit's they're in year 5 of the rotation, which meant they had already been through the year that they were up for deployment. So basically, they shouldn't come around for deployment for several more years, because you can always believe Uncle Sam and what they tell you. So apparently something happened. There was a unit that was in the pipeline getting ready to go. Something happened. They ended up being unsat, and they got pulled. and somebody looked and said, "Hey, let's send this guard unit here out of Ripley, Tennessee, the 268 MP company. Let's throw them in the mix." And so, yeah, in the middle of college there, they snagged me for about 8 months, and but it was that one wasn't a combat tour. That was more of a peacetime tour there in Kuwait. Everything was winding down. We were closing down the Iraqi border and everything. So I was able to still do some classes and everything online. Go over there. So I didn't get it didn't set me back too far. But yeah. So all that, all told, did the 4 deployments there on the guard side. Had a blast. Miss the people. Don't miss the Army system by any means, but I do miss the people. Wouldn't trade any of it for anything. It made me who I am today. It gave me an opportunity to make a lot of mistakes as a leader and get corrected and learn. So luckily for me, not that I still make plenty of mistakes, but I can definitely say that I made my biggest mistakes as a young buck sergeant as I was learning how to be a leader. And that's truly helped me as I've moved up through the ranks in the fire service, having learned some of those hard lessons early on and not having to learn them as much of them, present day.
Yeah. Yeah. You said something there very interesting when you were talking about how, you and the young firefighters came up with these new ideas that you wanted to implement. So I get a lot of questions from our listeners and from people that email me from responding to the articles I've written. And a lot of them share the same problem. They want to move their department forward. They want to change the old guard's way of doing things. They feel that they're stuck and it gets into a dicey area. Change can be good, but some things don't have to be changed. But anyway, they're always asking me, how can we affect change when we're at the lower end of the tier or when I feel alone and isolated? And I think you have a great example there of how to do it. You basically formed a team of like-minded individuals and worked together to affect change. Doesn't happen overnight. And I got to ask you, when you first went to the higher-ups with your ideas, was there resistance? Did this take time? And you had to stick with it, I imagine.
So we were lucky. The chief at the time was very, very supportive and was happy to have active young folks that were wanting to go to classes and go to training. The biggest thing that probably held us back on some of that stuff was a lot of it was not exactly budgeted for. And so we had to work a few little compromises. So we're a little different. And I have, in my travels and conversations with folks, learned the different ways that fire departments are structured. But we're a municipal fire department that is all volunteer. And so we're not a private 501c3 or my board of directors is the mayor board of aldermen for my town. So that, makes things a little different in how expenses go and things of that nature. But what we ended up doing kind of to overcome that is we would compromise. Chief would say, well, there's not enough money in the training budget to pay to send all of y'all to West Lukert. Okay. Well, what if the city pays the conference registration and we'll all chip in, for the hotel and gas, and so we did things like that to make that happen. But as far as bringing that stuff back and implementing the change, we had very, very supportive administration. As a matter of fact, one of our little group there actually was lieutenant at the time, and then became captain, and is currently is my deputy chief. So that was part of that core group. That kind of helped a little bit, but not having a micromanaging chief, not having a chief that if it's not my idea, we can't do it. A chief that had some natural leadership abilities, that helped a lot when we would come to him and say, hey, chief, we want to do this, this, and this. And okay, right. let's try it and see what happens. And so what a huge impact that has on an organization when you have somebody in charge that has that kind of open-mindedness and is willing to experiment and see, what happens. What a difference. You get so much from your people whenever you're willing to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So now that you're the chief, I would imagine you had good people to learn from. I imagine if someone comes to you with an idea, how do you handle it? Even if in your mind you're thinking there's no way we're going to do that. There's an act to that, isn't there? There's a technique there.
Well, now I can't give away all my secrets because my guys are probably listening, and so when ideas are brought to me, I try to be open about them. Now, my deputy chief would probably argue and say that I'm not, and that he has to kind of stay on me for a few months or whatever before I'll open up. It depends on what it is. When we start talking about tactics, we start talking about hose bed layouts. We're talking how we're going to lay the cross light. I'm very open to experimenting with that, and letting the folks, pull the lines, lay the supply lines, so on and so forth, and see what works for them. Because I still pull lines, that lucky on staffing, but at the end of the day, they're the ones usually riding the fire truck. So if they got an idea and they want to lay a compartment out a little differently, or they want to pack a hose load a little differently, I'm open to letting them, experiment with that and see what's going on. Usually where I drag my feet, the deputy chief has to keep, banging me over the head with stuff is like with technology and, reporting systems and, things that cost large amounts of money, that type of stuff. But absolutely, I try to be open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. I try to send folks to classes to come back with new ideas. And some of that's part of the technique that I talk about, with change being driven from the bottom up instead of mandated from the top down, is, I talk about in class leadership capital, okay? You've got so much capital built up, and, it's going to vary from leader to leader and department to department. And sometimes when you start mandating change, people can only digest so much at one time. And so you got to look at what it is you're trying to do and how much of your leadership capital is going to cost and how much you have. Because, if you make a big change and it flops, well, it's going to take a little bit longer to build that leadership capital back up. Okay, if you make a big change and it's successful, then, they're, okay, cool, Chief had a good idea there, okay? So a lot of times, if you got something that's going to be a tough sell, if you can get buy-in from the rank and file, even if it's just one or two, and they can spread it to others, then it's a whole lot easier to move that change up the chain. And so I'll send people to classes sometimes that, maybe I took the same class, or maybe I read an article, or, was exposed to that class material some way, somehow, and let them go and see, maybe do they take away the same thing that I took away from it? And if so, maybe let them drive that change from their position instead of me pushing it down, from my position. Because it doesn't matter how much people like you, how much they respect you. People are naturally resistant things being mandated to them. And so you've got to limit that, because I said so, or because I'm the fire chief.
Eliminate the collar talk.
Where you have to, Are there times and places that absolutely, that needs to happen? Sure, there are, but they're few and far between.
One thing, of course, we can never forget what, the legendary Chief Alan Brunacini used to say, right? Firefighters hate two things: change and the way things are. But the one thing I noticed it's funny you mentioned hose bed configurations, because it's such a stupid thing to talk about, but I got to tell you. So we adopted the flat load on our cross lays like over 20 years ago. I was an assistant chief. I was part of the process. We experimented, with the Minuteman. Actually, we learned a bunch of them at FDIC, the Minuteman, the Cleveland load, all these different loads. And we said, you know what? Let's keep it simple. We kept it. So we adopted the flat load. And it was a change from what we were doing. And but any change you do, when we adopted that flat load, we had to communicate it not once, not twice, but over and over again to make sure that people understood what we were doing. I think one thing that people resist change it occurs when it's not communicated well to them. You'll hear things like, well, when did that start? When did we start doing that? Or when did we get that? Or when did that take effect? And if you're not out in front of it and communicating it clearly as to why you're doing it and how you're doing it, not once, not twice, but in the case of our flat load, we put it in our newsletter every month. We reminded people at our training drill, at our monthly meeting, for probably a year or more, because we had 70-something members, and not everyone's around all the time. So you've got to just continue to communicate that change. You can't just throw it out there and expect people to know that you moved something or reconfigured something, or and explain the why, right? As our legendary guy that we love talking about, Jocko Willink, right, the Navy SEAL. Explain the why. And that helps get buy-in from the senior people, especially if you're changing a long-standing way of doing things. Ever experienced that? Did you have to change anything that was a long-standing way of doing things, or and there's like senior people that dedicated, passionate senior members that you got to really explain to them why you're doing it, and you got to be respectful too, wouldn't you say?
So funny story on that. So I've had to deal with that a few different times, but since we're talking about hose loads, we'll keep it there. So I was always a huge fan of the triple lay, and so we had the flat lay on the trucks for years and years and years. And I often joke, when I became training officer, I was so proud because it took me 13 years to finally get triple lay, on the cross lay beds. And I felt very, very, very strongly about the AAA and so on and so forth. And so then the irony of that, I finally get AAAs on the fire trucks, and so then we send a guy to nozzle forward, and he comes back and he's like, I think I may have been deputy chief by that point, and he comes back and he's like, hey, I want to try this new hose load out that we learned at nozzle forward. And so like, okay, let's see it. What do you got? So anyway, he packs it. It basically ends up being kind of a modified Minuteman. And, everybody tried pulling it. Everybody liked it. They said, hey, that's what we want to run on the trucks, And so, again, as a deputy chief, sometimes I still rode the truck, but at the end of the day, it was their truck, not my truck. And, so while I was proud of my achievement of finally getting the AAA on the truck, we ended up, probably 2 years later or so, changing it to a modified Minuteman. Going back to your point of communication, that person had left the department, and so we had a recruit class one night. We were doing hose loads, and some of the guys were helping out, and kind of had a little bit of turnover, new faces and whatnot, and folks were really, really enamored with the AAA. And they're like, hey, we're thinking about putting the AAA back on the trucks. I was like, I'm fine with it. Again, it's your guys' trucks. It's not mine. And I've gone from being so adamant about the AAA to, at the end of the day, now I don't care how you put your hose on your fire truck, as long as you can pull it and make it look nice, and not get it from the truck to the front door without it turning into a pile of spaghetti, and doing that
right.
efficiently and quickly. And so anyway, so we put it back on there as a AAA, and we were running a drill one night, and one person did not get the message that it had been changed back to a AAA, and kind of in the heat of the moment, we're running the drills at combat speed, and he tried to pull the AAA the way that the modified Minuteman is pulled, and I'll just tell you that ends badly.
That didn't go well.
So it was a learning lesson for everybody involved. But you're absolutely right. We thought we had communicated it well, but we apparently one person didn't get the message. Thankfully, it was a drill night, and not a live incident, because that's one thing I'm proud of my guys for a lot of things, but one thing I'm proud of my guys for is we stretch hose. We stretch hose a lot, and it's absolutely not acceptable to pull up on the fire ground and have a mishap stretching from the truck to the front door, and that is ingrained into our culture very, very, very deeply. We start teaching that from day one. When somebody joins the department, their first drill will most likely be pulling the pre-connect. So anyway, since we got on that,
the sign of a true professional right there.
So
that's one of the signs of a professional firefighter, right? Deploying the hose line adequately.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can't do that right, then it's just going to be a bad night. So
yeah, for sure.
At least be able to master that.
So I want to ask you, you put this your teaching together, your presentation together, shaping your volunteer fire department to meet today's expectations. I love the title, love the content idea. It's so relevant for today's world as it's changing in so many ways. We won't get into that, but we can get into, I know you focus primarily on 5 areas that you talk about, leadership and training and recruitment, retention, and marketing. But before we get into that, let's talk about this changing world of ours and the changing expectations with the service we provide, even this volunteer service, right? Expectations are changing out there. But, what are you talking about is today's changing expectations, and how are they different than 20 or 30 years ago, or maybe even 5 or 10 years ago? What are you seeing, and what are you telling folks?
Well, you put me in a hot seat, Tom. That's the question that I lead into with with the students, and I get to sit back and kind of take it in. And it's interesting sometimes, some of the things that folks see with regards to that. On the slide where I bring that up, I keep the kind of famous quote that probably everybody's seen from Chief John Eversole from Chicago, where he says, "Our department makes 1,120 calls every day. Do you know how many of those calls the public expects perfection on? 1,120. Nobody calls the fire department and says, 'Send me 2 dumbass firemen in a pickup truck.' In 3 minutes, they want 5 brain surgeon decathlon champions to come out and solve all their problems." And, while that's kind of tongue-in-cheek, there's a lot of truth to that, depending on where you are and what the expectations are. I'm famous for saying, because our department was founded in 1986, that, the generic phrase that I say all the time is it's not 1986 anymore with regard to how fire departments do business. The way we did things in Gilt Edge in 1986 worked for 1986, but it's not 1986. Okay, it's 2021. And so with that, obviously, EMS became a thing, but we really have made that shift, and it doesn't matter paid or volunteer, to that all hazards response type of agency. It's not just fires anymore. It's not just, an EMS call every now and then, I've watched our call volume in Gilt Edge grow from just under 200 when I joined to, last year we did 537 calls. Now that's over a period of 20 years, so that may not be that huge, but the biggest spike has happened in the last few years. We maintained the 200, 225, 250 for a long time before we started jumping into the 300s, 400s, and eventually 500s. We're already ahead this year on, as far as where we were last year. This time. So, it's, that's the big thing, the expectation of professionalism. I can't stand, to see poor performance on the fire ground. Anybody that's ever been on a fire ground with me can probably relate something along those lines. I don't have any qualms about communicating that to you if I think that it is poor performance. I have an expectation, and I think the public has the right to have the expectation, that you show up and you know how to do your job, okay? You know how to stretch that hose line from the truck to the fire. You know how to properly conduct a search. You know how to do VES. You know how to do rooftop ventilation or horizontal ventilation. You know how to minimize, damage, so on and so forth. If we're talking about an EMS call, we're expecting you to perform within your scope of practice, okay? Not just stand there and take notes or vital signs. Actually do something when and where you can. You're expected to be able to, quickly disassemble any vehicle that's mangled around another vehicle or a tree or a telephone pole to extricate patients. Out here where we are, we're in a rural area, so throw farm machinery and other, agricultural / industrial applications into that as well. Hazmat, you may not be a hazmat response team, but there's an expectation that, you at least be able to perform to the operations level. You at least be able to perform, some very minor, very small offensive operations to keep a small incident from turning into a big incident. So we've come a long way from 1986 when, we just needed a fire department to fight fires. things are becoming more in depth, a little more complicated. The expectations are higher across the board.
But Chief, we're only volunteer.
We're just volunteers. Yeah, right.
So we got a problem selling that message with people that are, you wonder, first of all, why are they joining if they don't support your ideas there, right? I mean, you're joining the fire department. Are you joining just to have a social club, right? One of the personas that we hate, but I guess there's people that join for that reason. I know, when I joined in 1982, I joined to be a firefighter and do what I could do to help my department render care to anyone in need. I guess there's people that don't join for that reason, isn't there? and we got to sell that message then that you're talking about, which is a great message to sell.
Well, Tom, first let me say that I was born in 1982. Just let me get that in there. But no, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, the social club fire department is still alive and well.
It sure is.
It's a black eye. It's a black eye for the rest of us that are trying to do right. It's an uphill battle, for those that are trying to run professional organizations that are trying to improve their service delivery, to have to fight the public perception of the social club volunteers, and then also, if you have to deal with that in your own response area, sometimes the jealousy and haters that can come out of that with the social club mindset. It's certainly a difficult task to deal with that can try your patience.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this, because let's be serious. I mean, let's be realistic too. There is a social side to the volunteer fire service, and it's very important. It's very important that there is a social side, but it has to be balanced with the very real side of fire and emergency response. What are some of the things you do to keep that social side alive? That, obviously you guys are very sharp and train hard, and you're ready for whatever gets thrown your way, but you're not discounting the social side either, right? You're still doing things for your membership and the families, right? Because that's important.
So, yes, absolutely. You want to keep the social aspect alive, and I think that it is important to distinguish that. When we talk about the social club fire department, we're talking about the fire department that, does little to no training. Meeting nights are social gatherings as opposed to, actual training nights. Rank is handed out left and right. Doesn't matter, what your skill level is. Helps maybe if you're related to somebody. That's what we're talking about with the social club fire department.
Right.
But absolutely, if you're building a high-performing team, and that's what I focus around in a lot of my presentations, is building a high-performing team. If you build that high-performing team, then the social aspect comes together because that team gels. They click as a team, okay? But absolutely, what you're saying. So we just had a shrimp boil on Sunday where we bring all the family members that are available. Come on out. We pitch in. Everybody throws in whatever $10-$20, and we do that pretty regularly during the summer months. We like to do potlucks.
What did you call it? I'm from the north. What was that? What was it? A shrimp boil?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
You like shrimp, right? Surely, you eat shrimp up there, right?
Oh, we do. I just didn't know what you were calling it there.
So we put it all together in a pot with potatoes and corn and Cajun sausage, and you season it different ways, and everybody's got their own little recipe how they do it. Anyway, it's a big boil, and then you pour it out onto like a table. And everybody just kind of, you just stand around the table and you just fill your plate off of the big pile, or everybody, if it's just a few of you, you'll sit around the table and just eat straight out of the pile.
Gotcha.
But, so that's one thing we do. Like I said, we do a lot of cookouts or potlucks. I'm a big fan of potlucks, especially when folks want to get in competition with different dishes and everything. As long as they don't contain onions, I'm good. And then so we do those things. Of course, we do our annual awards dinner, which we've actually started doing that as a potluck. And then one of the things I stole from you was the Thanksgiving Day breakfast. We started doing that several years ago, I think, whenever I went to your class at FDIC. I brought that back, and that tradition's continued now for 3 or 4 years now. We gather down at the station at around 7:30, 8 o'clock, and cook breakfast and fellowship there early that morning, and then everybody goes their separate ways for whatever their families celebrations are going to be for Thanksgiving Day. But that's probably the main things that we do as far full families. Bring the kids, bring the wife, bring the husband, all that good stuff. But then there's a lot of other just kind of impromptu things that the guys just come up with. Somebody will throw out onto the group meet, hey, getting burgers or steaks or dogs or whatever. Going to grill tonight. Anybody wants to come down? And hey, that's great. Because that gets you 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 folks down at the station now, staffing, hanging out in the afternoons. And of course, not everybody can do it every night.
Love when people are at the firehouse.
But
love people being at the firehouse.
Anything that gets people at the firehouse usually is going to be a good thing. So absolutely. So the social aspect is important. I guess where I probably do the most emphasis is and I know my deputy chief's heard me say this before. I hate to sacrifice a training night, for something that's not training related. Do we do it sometimes? Sure, because we actually do train every Monday night for the fire department, and then special operations trains every second and fourth Thursday. And so we do have a lot of things going on. So sometimes especially if it falls on a holiday or just you can kind of sense or tell that maybe we need to take a break. Then we may turn drill night into a cookout or something like that. But it's very, very, very rare. Normally, Monday night, that's training night. No ifs, ands, buts about it. Is how that normally goes.
So you talk about that in your presentation. You talk about the changing world today and shaping your volunteer fire department to meet today's expectations. And one of the areas you do highlight is training. So why don't we continue on with training? And what do you like to tell the folks about how do you shape your training program to meet today's expectations?
Well, the biggest thing with regard to training is how much training really impacts retention. So, you hear a lot of times, and even I heard this. I mean, there was some doubt when we decided we were going to require firefighter 1, firefighter 2, within 24 months of joining the department, that we would lose people, so on and so forth. Well, it didn't happen. I've read the quote. I don't remember which book it came from, and I'm probably not quoting it exactly. But essentially what it boils down to is if you raise the bar on your training program, you make your organization more appealing to high achievers. And I firmly believe that. A lot of folks are scared to raise that bar on training. And the excuse that you immediately hear is, well, if we step up the training game, we'll run people off. And my response to that is good. Because the people that I'm going to run off because we just upped the training game are not the people I want to count on at 2 o'clock in the morning when everything's burning, and then nuns and puppies are, trapped on the third floor and, everything's just, going to hell. I want quality, high-performing, high-achieving individuals. And so the way you get those, you can transform some folks into that, or you can attract people that already have that mindset. And I like to do both. And if somebody runs away because training is too tough, too realistic, then, it's probably for the better for everybody involved.
And you said it earlier, too, just about it becomes part of your culture. So to people that join after you've established that, that's all they know.
So we talk about, quality training is going to do several things, okay? It's going to obviously improve your service delivery to the customer because, we're training on what we do. we're gonna be able to do it safer. Okay, so we're enhancing safety. Okay, I'm not one of I'm all about firefighter safety, but my philosophy on it is more centered around if you'll properly train and properly equip and then get out of their way, then you'll achieve safe operations if you did the training and equipping part properly. But so the better the training, the more we enhance safety. We build up our confidence. Okay, it doesn't matter paid or volunteer. We're not doing this stuff every day. We're not doing saw operations every day. We're not, probably stretching lines every day. So every time we do that is an opportunity to build a member's confidence. Drill nights are huge no matter what the training is because it builds the camaraderie of the team. The huge thing from my standpoint as a fire chief, I like to watch sometimes. And sometimes the officers do the same thing, or if they're working directly with somebody, it lets the officers begin to assess the knowledge, skills, and abilities of the members, okay, during the training performance. So we determine, hey, does an individual need a little additional instruction in one area, or do we as a team need collectively more instruction, so on and so forth. Through training, we develop our high achievers, we weed out the mediocrity, and we motivate members to improve as not only individuals but as a team. So those are the huge things that I like to push out with training. Did I mention that high-quality training also enhances your retention of your members? Because members want to make calls, they want to train. All right, I can't control calls. Okay, people go to jail for that. All right, but I can control training. And so if I can make training intense, realistic, something that they didn't feel like they came and wasted their time for, then that's going to attract them and keep them coming back.
Absolutely. Say it all the time. People don't want to go home and have their significant other when they say, how was the training tonight? What a waste of time. That's the last thing. What's a volunteer's most precious commodity? Time. You waste their time, they're going to find something else to do.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And build their confidence. I like what you said, too. We get I see this a lot. People sometimes, especially newer members, they're not that confident, and they might be intimidated. Maybe they don't know anyone, so they're shy and timid. But sometimes it's true of the older member, too. I've seen it with some older members, 30-year members that back in their day, they were in their prime, and they knew it, and they were chugging along and doing everything. And now they come to a training night, and maybe their skills aren't as sharp, and right away they're expected to perform like they did 25 years ago, and they get embarrassed, and the next thing you know, they're not coming to drill anymore because they don't want to be embarrassed again. It requires tact, and it requires, as you said, the officers got to know their audience and learn to work with their audience and have a good plan put together for those new members, for those senior members, just a good plan in general so you're not wasting their time and you're not embarrassing or belittling anyone.
Absolutely. I call it square pegs and square holes and round pegs and round holes. Find where people fit and put them in positions to excel and improve, but don't set them up for failure.
Yeah, don't set them up for failure. And so you talk about retention. So that's something you focus on. Is there other things that you see out there that we got to change how we're doing things today to help improve retention? Training is definitely a huge component of a good retention program. What else do you see in 2021, that can factor into retaining good volunteers?
All right, so and that one ties back to leadership, and we glossed over that one, and that one's fine because we could make an entire show 3 hours just talking about the leadership aspect.
And maybe we will someday.
Exactly. So on the retention side of things, that's the biggest one because, to me, once you start investing time and of course and money into folks, because it sometimes costs money to go to trainings, it costs money to equip folks. You spend a lot of time invested in getting them trained. We need to be investing in keeping them, and the biggest thing falls back to that leadership aspect of it, which is treat people right. Okay, Mark Von Oppen probably has no idea, even though we've talked plenty of times, how much of an impact he had in us kind of shaping what we did around 2014, 2015 to change our department. But following that model of the Big Four, do your job, treat people right, give all-out effort, and have an all-in attitude. The big one, treating the people right. Treat people with respect. Treat them how, you want to be treated. I always ask the question in class, why do good people leave the volunteer fire service? Okay? Sure, there's always going to be conflicts with time, okay? But people that are engaged, that are truly engaged and dedicated, they find a way. I think you and I talked one time, about all the different things that you had going on, but you still found time, to volunteer. I've heard you brought up NVFC in the beginning. I was on the podcast with them, or a Facebook Live event with them, and Tiger Schmittendorf was on there, and he talked about everything he had going on, but still, he found time to volunteer. So, I don't think that's the other commitments in life are certainly part of it, but with a little work, those can be balanced. I think the biggest reason we lose people is because of poor leadership. We don't know how to treat people. We don't know how to lead people. We don't know how to talk to people. I could give you countless and countless examples. I know a department in particular, the last 6 months, they've had 10 people leave that fire department, and 9 out of those 10 have cited the fire chief as being the reason why they left.
Wow. How do you like that on your resume, Chief?
Yeah, right. The FBI would call that a clue that maybe there's a problem. But honestly, I think that's the biggest thing. I asked the members in class, what do they think as far as that goes, and you'll get a few of the general generic answers, but the across the board, answer can be summed up in out of touch leadership, toxic cultures, and toxic individuals. When you have that going, Chief.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. No, I could tell you this. I just did a presentation for Brad Pinsky, the fire service attorney, had a conference, and he had me put a presentation together on how to lose people quickly. And I did a big research project. I put a ton of time into doing some research. The number one reason people are leaving volunteer fire departments, this is after interviewing thousands of volunteers, both former volunteers and current volunteers that stayed but really thought about quitting. The number one reason was clicks and leadership. So you hit the nail on the head. You know what didn't even factor in? Time and training requirements.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
And I think I remember that survey. I think I remember filling out that survey.
Yeah, it was one of the big ones. I read a bunch of them, and I meshed them together. But National Volunteer Fire Council did a huge one, and they just updated it again a year or so ago. And it's just amazing. It's if people want to find it, you can find it on definitely on the web, on the internet. And it's mind opening. It really is. I thought everyone's quitting because. And here's another thing that jumped out when they interviewed current leadership thought people couldn't find the time to volunteer. They weren't even looking in the mirror of, hey, I could be the problem here.
And that's the biggest thing, and I love it when I get chief officers in the room, because that tells me, number one, that they're probably doing things pretty correct if they're actually coming into a class that's essentially going to call out and make you reflect how you are handling business. So I think that's a huge thing is being willing to look in that mirror in a situation and say, am I the problem? And you're absolutely right. A lot of people are not willing to do that. It's hard. It's hard for anybody to realize, especially when you've come out and you've said this, you've done this, so on and so forth, to eat crow, as we call it in the South, or have to backtrack, or to have to, say, hey, look, guys, you know what? I messed up. Let's go back and rethink this. That's hard. That's hard for a lot of people to do. So, Chief Brunacini, we've talked about several times, he always said egos eat brains. And it absolutely is true. People will do really, really, really dumb stuff when pride gets in the way.
Oh, God, yeah. Let me throw this out. We'll tie three things together and see how we would handle this. Let me tie together training with leadership and retention. So we know how important it is to train our members. We know how how we need to encourage our members to be at the training drill. We want them at the training drill. Now we have a member who has dropped off the radar a little bit. He's just not, he or she, not coming around like they used to. You are the leader, and you call them and talk to them. Hey, I need you to be at this drill. You're falling behind. And something in life came up, a baby, a job, a family problem. What do you do as a leader when you need people to be at drill, but understanding we're dealing with volunteers that maybe the problem is, oh, my God, I got a huge project for work. I'm now doing 60 hours a week at work. I come home at 10 o'clock at night. What can we do? Because ultimately we want to retain these members, but we need them to be well-trained as well. Leadership is huge here, isn't it?
Absolutely.
What would you do,
and
Chief?
it's going to be well. So how you approach the situation is huge. So I have a very, very good deputy chief, captain, and sergeant currently as far as officers. And so when someone misses a drill, there's a good chance that before I can even notice that they have missed the drill, that either the sergeant or the captain has already reached out to them to see if everything's okay. And that's the important thing is how do you lead with that? You don't lead with, hey, you missed drill, where are you at? Or what happened? Always lead
Right.
with the benefit of the doubt of, hey, man, is everything okay? Anything going on? We missed you at drill. Is everything good? And lead in that way and see where things go from there as far as what the cause is. Normally, if it makes it to my desk, then it's probably become a habitual issue that the captain and the sergeant and the deputy chief have already tried to intervene with, properly, and it's probably one of those we've had a member that's become disengaged for whatever reason. But even if that's the case, I'm still going to have that sit down as a chief, and talk with them. Hey, what's going on? What can we do to help you? Is there anything that we can do as a department to kind of make things easier? Sometimes folks take a leave of absence if they've got some things going on. I'm not a huge fan of that because, once you get sucked into the volunteer fire service, and this, you got that pager on your hip, and once you take that off for 6 months, to take a break, and statistically, or my experience at least, has been that, you're probably
it's hard to get them back
on. Or if you do, you're not coming back as the same engaged firefighter that you were, potentially beforehand. But yeah. I do allow that option. But when that option,
on one hand, it looks good. You're trying to on one hand, it looks good for retention because, if someone's going through a family problem and they just say, give me 6 months off, it looks like you're trying to do the right thing for them, while they try to get their life back in order. But like you said, it's so true. We've seen it a little bit with COVID, with members not maybe coming around like they did. And once you disengage a little bit, it's hard to get back into it.
You're absolutely right. Actually, one of the reasons why I kind of handled our COVID situation the way we did was because of that very thing, and I wanted to maintain as much normalcy as we possibly could. We never did suspend training. We social distanced a little more. The fire station was cleaner than what it has been. Can always, the chief's never happy with cleaning. You can always be cleaner. But, we made, obviously, a few modifications to things. But, my biggest worry, as chief when COVID hit was, again, maintaining that sense of normalcy, keeping the ship on course, all right, not showing any sense of panic whatsoever on the leadership side of things. Because everybody was a little uneasy. Nobody really knew what to expect. we were following recommendations and guidelines and what have you. But I look at it like this right here. COVID or no COVID, the 911 phones didn't stop ringing. The tones didn't stop dropping. We still had medical calls that were not COVID related. Essentially, what we do did not stop, and therefore I could not justify in my mind how in the world we could lay off of training when, emergencies didn't stop happening while COVID was going on. We saw departments do different things. Some departments quit answering certain EMS calls. I mean, to me, I think that's a slap in the face to the public that you serve, quite frankly. And I mean, if anybody wants to debate me on that one, they can. They know how to get in touch with me. But we made sure to maintain that normalcy with our membership, because the last thing I wanted to have happen is folks stop showing up, especially the EMS calls. And we never missed a beat. We're still running strong. We got that respond from home model. We're well over 2+ years without a missed call. I think it was 2018, October 2018, the last time we missed a call for service. And so the guys and gals never missed a beat throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I'm very proud of them for that. And, they definitely represented the Giltedge Fire Department well. But we also made sure to make sure the public knew, through our social media campaigns and whatnot, that and this gets into marketing, that, hey, look.
Yeah, that's a good thing to get into, marketing. How are we marketing different today?
So
what do we got to do?
We've got a brand. All right, we've got to market our brand. You've got to look at that department patch or that logo or whatever your department, something that people look at and say, okay, yep, that's the Snyder Volunteer Fire Department, or that's the Giltedge Volunteer Fire Department. You've got to associate that symbol with good. Okay, you've got to get out there. The biggest thing is, I think, is social media. Getting your story told, whether you tell it or you get it told by the news media. If you have a relationship with news media, or you're in a market where that's something that you can really kind of lean on, it helps immensely. The more the public knows about what you're doing, the more apt they are to want to fund whatever it is that you're asking for, whether that's sending out, requests for donation, whether that's doing a pancake supper or dinner or breakfast, fish fry, whatever you've got going on where you're trying to raise money. If it's just simply going to your board or your city and asking for additional funding, the more educated the public is about what you're doing, the easier it is to sell the money request that you're asking for. And so being able to understand that. So there's a lot of folks, and I respect this, that they don't want to toot their own horn. They don't want to brag. Well, if, we post this on Facebook, it looks like we're bragging or whatever. Or, we've gotten flack. Oh, y'all are just posting that so you can brag, blah, 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 whatever. No, we're posting it so the public knows what the department is doing. The public that has donated in the past, that we're going to ask to donate in the future, the public that, votes for the mayor and the aldermen and so on and so forth. When we need extra money from the county, whatever, we put our name out there and we showcase our members and what they're doing. Now, that marketing campaign also then ties back in to recruitment and retention. Okay. Now, I've had guys tell me, Chief, you don't have to put me on Facebook. You don't have to write up what I did, blah, blah, blah. Makes me uncomfortable or whatever. Okay. They say that, right? And then you turn around and do that. Hey, we'd like to welcome so-and-so, or hey, good job, so-and-so got their, firefighter 1 or 2 or whatever certification. They like that. Okay. They like, their parents like it. Friends like it. Spouses like it, and if nothing else, even if the member's uncomfortable with it, I guarantee you the spouse likes to see it. The mom and dad like to see it. And so, so that marketing, again, hey, look at us. This is what we're doing. This is what we're achieving. And at the same time, that turns around, that reaches people that are like, hey, maybe I'd like to do that too. Maybe I'd like to achieve that as well. So that ties into your recruitment. And then on the retention side, hey, you know what? This department appreciates what I do because they're willing to showcase that and show what I'm doing on a regular basis and what everybody else is doing, so on and so forth. So the marketing thing ties together so many different aspects from, again, justifying that funding, donations, tax money, however it's being provided, being able to justify that. And then, like I say, ties directly back to the retention and recruitment of individuals.
there's a red flag with member profiles, which I'm a big fan of member profiles and all, and highlighting all the good that our members do. Even we're out on training, we're out on a detail, or there's campaigns going now with some of the departments. New York State has had a Recruit New York event they do in April every year. It was last weekend, and some companies do member profiles, which is great. I'm a big fan of them. But I've had a couple people reach out to me in my class over the years that they said the problem they've had with their department's social media is it only focuses on certain people. It's always the same people over and over again, and sometimes it's the one running the social media side of things. So what I always try to tell people is, again, I agree on everything you said, that you have to brand your department. Tell your story. Don't let somebody else tell your story. You tell your story. But when you talk about your members, spread the wealth. Be fair and equitable to everybody, new people, senior people, the person you don't even like, but they're still a member of your department. You can't play favorites. Be fair and be equitable and spread the wealth, and you'll go a long way toward retaining members and making members happy.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I'm going to tell a funny story here that I'm probably going to catch some flack for. Because my members have made it abundantly clear, texting, that they are listening. So one of the members confided in another member that their spouse got upset that there were several Facebook posts in a row or something that I forget the exact details, but anyway, that the certain member was not featured as much as other members were, and so anyway, that trickled back to me, and and I approached the member about it, and that's when I found out that it wasn't so much that he was bothered by it as much as his spouse was bothered by it. And so anyway, I pulled out my camera, and I showed him all of the wonderful pictures that I took of him during the training event, and how I would have loved to have posted them, but and this was vehicle extrication that was going on, but I was like, well, in this picture, you didn't have your safety glasses on, so I wasn't going to post that one. In this picture, you didn't have your gloves on, so I wasn't going to post that one. And, anyway, so we went through all of this, and, it was a humorous experience, but it was like, I am taking pictures of you, but when I go through, if it's a bad photo or, there's something that, I don't want to hear the keyboard commanders come on and,
all those keyboard warriors, they'll be all over it.
Oh, yeah. Well, he doesn't have his safety vest on. Oh, my goodness. I'm not knocking safety vests. We have a policy. You operate in the streets, you put your safety vest on. But come on. I mean, that's the best you can take away from a picture, is, he didn't have his safety shield down. And, I get it. It is important, and we do make those corrections. But, at the time of those photos, they the right things weren't in place, and we're not going to showcase that,
Yeah, I'm done with these keyboard warriors. I think I've said it on this show before. Yes, watch the videos, look at the posts, learn from them, talk about them internally, but stop lashing out at the brothers and sisters. You don't know the full story behind the photo you're looking at or the video you're looking at, and everyone can have a bad day. Everyone can make a mistake. Everyone can do something wrong. Learn from it. Talk about it in-house. But my God, we celebrate our brotherhood and sisterhood. Why are we beating the crap out of each other on social media? It just annoys me to no end, and it's got to stop. I've been saying it on this show for a while now. People are listening to the show are probably like, Merrill, we get it, but it's got to be said. This keyboard warrior mentality has got – our world is nasty enough right now. We are living in a nasty world, hence what we've been talking about tonight. We've got to meet today's expectations, and part of what we're dealing with today is a nastier world. Well, let's not be nasty to each other as brothers and sisters in this great profession that we love. It's got to stop.
So we got a little phrase there at Gilt Edge, smile and wave. And so that's, I see things.
It. Smile and wave. Love it.
Smile and wave. I see things on social media regularly that irk me, and I just let it roll. I let it. Whether it's directed at me or it's directed at somebody else, I don't care. I just let it roll. I share things that are controversial all the time. I have for years. There's a lot of people that don't like me because of I share things on Facebook that apparently they think is calling them out. I've done it for years. My thing is, if you don't like it, keep scrolling. If it makes you feel uncomfortable, then maybe you need to take one of those hard looks in the mirror again that we talked about earlier. But when it comes to, I know what you're talking about, getting on the videos and bashing other departments, and you're absolutely right. Have we all probably been guilty of it at some point? I know years ago, yes, I would have been guilty of it. I'll raise my hand and say that I have judged people based on a moment in time or a single picture, and I regret that. And I make conscious efforts not to do that, even sometimes when you see things that just looking at it are absolutely egregious. You don't know what's going on, okay? You don't know why they did what they did, and unless you do, you really just need to take it and learn from it and move on. And if it bothers you so bad, then just scroll on. But we can't do that. We hide behind our keyboards now, and you can't get punched in the mouth, at least not right away for something you post on social media. So that's emboldened a lot of people and what they like to share. But
it sure does, brother.
But yeah, it does get old, and we haven't had a huge problem with it, but it's been a little bit here and there. But yeah, the keyboard commando stuff on the social media platforms can go away as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I try to tell my members, and just, even if someone says something negative about our department, just ignore it. Just don't engage. It'll go away. Chief, listen.
When you do that, I was going to say, when you do that, when you skip over it, when you don't engage them, it just irks them even more. So it's the best response.
Sure does.
It's just smile and wave.
Yeah, and they'll move on to something else. Oh, my brother, we've been talking for a good hour and a half, and I think it's time to start winding things up a little bit, because I know you and I could talk for another hour and a half, but we'd have to have a cigar at this point, I think. So
I think
hopefully
so.
In August
in
Indy.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Yeah, if we don't stop
I gotta
it
tell
now,
you,
it's the drag on for hours.
A lot of listeners listening in tonight. I'm getting a lot of nice texts and things here on social media. People listening in, appreciate. Now you've given a great topic for discussion tonight. And before I wrap things up with you, what any final thoughts that you'd like to say about our volunteer fire service meeting the expectations today, being professional? What any final thoughts you'd like to offer before we wrap things up?
I'll leave it with this, and that it all starts with leadership. And one of the things that irks me a lot when it comes to that is, you can look at any of the conferences around, you can look at any of the books that are out there available. There are more classes and more books on leadership than there are any other topic in the fire service. And it's really not even just in the fire service, it's business as well. It's leadership is adequately covered. The material is out there. I don't understand why we still struggle so much with how to lead people, how to treat people, how to look out for people, okay? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And if we would just remember that a little bit more, I think a lot of the problems that we see in the volunteer fire service and in the world even would work themselves out if we just, as leaders, knew how to treat people.
Well said. Well said. Great topic. Great information. Chief, I know people are going to have more questions for you. They're going to want to talk to you. Can you share your contact info if anyone wanted to reach out to you, if anyone wanted to have you come out and do a presentation on how they can shape their volunteer fire company for today, meeting today's expectations? How can people get a hold of you, Chief?
Sure, absolutely, which I think you tagged me in one of your posts on, I don't know if it was on your page, on the professional volunteer page, but yes, they can reach me by email. It's going to be DocFletch135. That's DocFletch135 @yahoo.com.
Oh, fantastic. Can't thank you enough for being here today, and thank you for your service. One last question for you.
Yes,
What's
sir.
this Earl of Funk, Duke of Cool, Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla that I see on your Facebook page? Is there something you need to tell us that? Is that a line from Heartbreak Ridge, or is that something else? I'm trying to think where I've heard that before.
Oh, you nailed it. Awesome.
Did I?
Awesome.
Oh, I'm a movie guy. I'm a movie guy. All right, I thought so.
That is one of my favorite movies. Actually, I'd probably top it. That is my favorite movie, Heartbreak Ridge. So, yes, absolutely. You nailed it. It's straight out of the movie. I won't tell the story. You got to watch the movie. Yeah, I got to get you a cigar now. So that's good. Awesome.
All right. Well, Chief, thank you so much. I think we can line up another show for sure because there's so much we could talk about. We'll spend a night talking about leadership for sure. And, even that article you wrote, I saw playing the Rural Cards. That was a fantastic article. I'd love to talk about what you're doing in your department to get your new members off and rolling and being ready for fire. But a topic for another night, my friend. Thank you for spending an hour and a half with me here tonight. It was really, really well worth it. Great info. You're doing great things, and I think your department's lucky to have you.
Well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate that, and thank you again for having me.
Our pleasure. So thanks for being here. And folks, thank you for listening in. And I'd like to thank Fire Engineering and Chief Bobby Halton and Clarion Events for supporting my podcast and all the other podcasts that are out there that cover so many topics within this great fire service of ours. I'm just honored to be one of the many podcasts that are available for your listening pleasure, and I'm honored that you choose to listen in and spend some time with me. So it means a lot to me. If you'd like to reach out to me for anything, feel free. tamerrill63@AOL.com is my email. I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. It's the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. I'm on Twitter. I'm always posting information. Give my page a like. Give me an email. Let me know what you're doing in your hometown, or if you're having any challenges, or if there's anything you want me to talk about on this show. I'm more than willing. I've gotten a lot of great ideas. I got a lot of great topics lined up for the rest of the year. I do have a YouTube channel now as well, the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, and I put all my podcasts on there. I've got some cool historical videos. So please, please, please get in touch with me. Follow me and let me know what you think of our volunteer fire service and what you're doing in your town and some of the great things you've seen and even some of the things maybe you're challenged with. I'd love to hear from all of you, so feel free to please reach out to me. Folks, I just got to end on one note because every now and then our fire service loses a true legend, a firefighter who left behind a legacy of service and made a tremendous impact on our profession. And yesterday we lost such a man, and I think it's only proper that we honor him by remembering him here this evening. And I'm talking about the great Leo Stapleton from Boston, former fire commissioner, former fire chief of department for Boston, joined back in 1951. He was a World War II veteran. He followed his father into the fire service. I believe his father was even the chief of the Boston Fire Department, and he passed away at age 94 yesterday. As I said, he was the fire chief. He was also the fire commissioner from 1984 until he retired in 1991. Author of many, many great books, several I've read, 30 Years on the Line, Commish, Wooden Sticks and Iron Men, among so many other books that he authored, and he just was a true professional firefighter, loved by many, actually by all who came in contact with him. And I just like to remember him here this evening. In Boston lingo, he was a good Jake. Rest in peace, Chief Commissioner. You will be greatly missed. Folks, my next show scheduled for Tuesday, June 8th. I look forward to again talking about our great volunteer fire service and events that are so important to all of us. So thanks for tuning in tonight. And remember, wherever you happen to be listening in, stay safe. And folks, please always remember that our residents are owed professional service delivered by professional firefighters representing professional organizations. Take care, folks. Stay safe, and God bless.